This person was there, sitting, standing, talking, listening, but it was no longer really them. They remained on the outside. But on the inside they had already departed. They stayed because it was easier than disappearing. They stayed because no one would understand if they left. They stayed out of obligation, out of routine, out of fear. But they had already gone. You couldn't see it, but you could sense it. Anyone who looked closely would notice the emptiness in their eyes, the absent touch, the automatic gesture, the lifeless response. This person no longer felt anything. They tried to seem present, but all they did was survive the presence. They walked, complied, smiled, but they didn't live. Not from weakness, not from drama. There was just nothing left inside that could stay. They gradually emptied out, disappearing bit by bit, leaving without making a sound, and when someone finally noticed, it was already too late. This person tried to come back, tried to reconnect, tried to find within themselves a trace of who they used to be, but found nothing but silence. A kind of silence that only those who have lived understand. It doesn't hurt, but it weighs heavy. It doesn't shout, but it drains you. And the cruelest part is that this person was there, within reach, just a meter away, but unreachable. Because what remained was only the body. The soul no longer resided there. You can tell, even if no one says anything. Even if the topic never comes up, even if everything continues apparently normal, you can tell. There's a kind of energy that no longer fits, a presence that weighs even while seeming light, an absence that drags on among the furniture, between gestures, between glances. This person stayed, but not entirely. They stayed because it was what was expected. They stayed because it seemed safer. They stayed because there was still a hope that something would make sense again, but it no longer did. Not the touch, not the sound, not the memory. They stayed, but without a soul. They stayed, but without presence. They stayed, but everything inside had already left. And the most brutal part is that no one noticed at first. Because this absence doesn't manifest with screams, it doesn't arrive with a crash, it doesn't disrupt the scene, it just turns off the lights. And the body, it continues. It does what it has always done, follows the routine, the rituals, the commitments, but without pulse. This person walks as if they are here, but they are not. They respond as if they feel, but they do not feel. They smile as if they are alive inside, but there is almost nothing left there. It's not laziness, it's not unwillingness. It's an emotional bankruptcy, silent, long, subtle, a resignation that settled in slowly, first in patience, then in faith, then in sparkle, then in love. This person no longer recognizes what once made sense. They no longer feel moved. They no longer care. They no longer expect anything. They just want time to pass, for the days to end, for the words to stop demanding a reaction. It's hard to say this, but it's real. This person remains because leaving would require too many explanations. Justifications that can't be put into words, reasons that don't fit into sentences, feelings that find no name. And when someone asks what happened, this person says nothing. I'm just tired. I'm just different. But it's not tiredness. It's absence. It's a rupture. It's the end that no one had the courage to announce. This person doesn't know when they left. They only realized when they could no longer return. And that's when the theater began. A perfect theater, where everything expected is done, where everything necessary is repeated, where everything is given, except the truth. Because the truth is too simple, it's too raw, it's too dangerous. The truth is, this person doesn't feel anything anymore. They don't feel anger, they don't feel desire, they don't feel a will to fight. They don't feel a will to stay. But they remain there, and that's the hardest part to explain, because those who see from the outside don't understand how someone can be and not be. But those who live this know. This person looks into eyes, but doesn't see. Hugs, but doesn't feel. Speaks, but can't hear themselves. They are. They just are. And the body grows tired. Because carrying an absence hurts more than any presence. Have you ever noticed this in someone? Someone who seemed to be there but wasn't anymore. Someone who said they were fine, but only existed out of obligation. Someone who could no longer feel even pain, because there was no strength left for that. This person might live with you, they might work with you. They might sleep beside you. Or maybe this person is you, because there comes a moment when it's impossible to pretend anymore. Laughter doesn't come out like it used to. Touch doesn't warm. Conversations don't flow. Time doesn't pass. Everything hangs in the balance, as if life has been put on mute. And yet, this person continues. They go on for the children, for the name, out of fear, out of guilt. They continue for the image, for the routine, for the echo of what was once. But not out of desire. The desire is gone, along with the soul. And then the world divides between those who notice and those who ignore. Those who notice feel, even if they can't explain. They feel the emptiness in the air, the lack of life in the words, the absence in the little things. And those who ignore demand. They demand reactions, they demand smiles, they demand presence, they demand engagement. But they don't understand that expecting from someone who has already left inside is like asking a flower from a dry root. This person isn't angry, isn't sad, isn't anything, and that's frightening. Because when the soul leaves, what's left is an unbearable silence, a type of silence that can't be filled with company, can't be filled with praise, can't be filled with anything, because what's missing isn't attention, it's meaning. This person has stopped recognizing their own worth, stopped recognizing the reason, stopped recognizing even what they liked. They slowly faded away, like a candle that finishes burning and simply goes out, without noise, without drama, without warning, just not there anymore. And the worst is that it will continue for a while longer, because no one teaches how to leave, no one teaches how to come back, no one teaches what to do when one gets lost inside. This person doesn't know if there's any salvation left, doesn't know if it's possible to reignite something, doesn't know if there's still time. All they know is that they remain, but only in body. If you've noticed this in someone, or if you feel this way yourself, comment, "I needed to hear this." Because sometimes what the soul wants is simply to be acknowledged, even if it has already departed. And maybe, just maybe, this realization is already the beginning of some kind of return. But this, only the next silence will reveal. This person continues, but now it's automatic. They wake up, get up, respond, move around. But everything feels like merely fulfilling a cycle that has already lost its purpose. Nothing pulses, nothing calls, nothing vibrates. There's an absence settled in their chest that has become normalized, so much so that it seems normal, but it isn't. It's a dense silence, trapped between the ribs, that neither explodes nor dissipates. This person has learned to exist in a state of waiting, but they no longer know what they are waiting for, whether it's the end, whether it's a miracle, whether it's just a new beginning that still has no name. And in the meantime, they continue drifting away from themselves. They're putting off everything that once mattered. What used to spark something inside now irritates, bothers, exhausts. The touch of those who insist on getting closer, the words of those who demand a reaction, the attempts of someone wanting to help. Everything feels intrusive, not because the person is numb, but because any approach seems to be speaking to someone who no longer resides there. And they really don't. This person has hidden away, on the inside, in a place where no one can reach, and maybe they don't even know how they did it. They just know it was the only way to keep breathing, hiding the most alive part to avoid breaking, protecting what little remains, even if it means appearing absent. And so, life goes on, but in a strange way, somewhat disjointed, somewhat incomplete. Days pass, voices speak, tasks are completed, but nothing truly comes in, nothing touches, nothing breaks this invisible exile, and this person starts to get used to it. She keeps saying everything's fine so often that she starts to believe it. She smiles on the outside and is dying on the inside with such mastery that the whole world applauds while she collapses in silence. Because it's not that this person wants to disappear. She just can't feel anymore. She no longer wants to explain. She no longer has the patience to justify. She no longer has the energy to feign emotion. The truth is simple. This person is tired. But it's not the kind of tiredness that can be solved with sleep. It's the type that comes from losing her soul along the way and having to keep walking anyway. Someone still says, reinvent yourself, strengthen yourself. It will pass, but it doesn't pass. You can't reinvent what you can't find. You can't strengthen what no longer feels like it has a purpose. And this person doesn't want pity, nor advice, nor cheap promises. She just wants someone to notice. Notice the weight on her shoulders. Notice the silence in her eyes. Notice the way she takes a deep breath before speaking. Notice the presence that no longer exists, even while being there. Have you ever seen someone like that? Have you ever been someone like that? Have you ever noticed this kind of absence dressed as presence? If so, right here, even if it's just one word, even if it's just a period. Sometimes that's all this person needs, a sign that she's still noticeable, that someone still sees her, even when she can no longer see herself, because there's a part of this person that's still trying, even if she doesn't know it, even if she doesn't say it, even if she doesn't ask for it. There's a part that still wants to come back, that still wants to feel, that still wants to be for real. But this part is buried by pains that haven't been heard, by resignations that no one noticed, by accumulations that have turned into walls, and the more time passes, the harder it is to find the way back. But it's possible, just not in the way the world expects, not with ready-made formulas, not in a hurry, not with cliché phrases or fake encouragements. What this person needs, and it's about space, space to not have to pretend, space to breathe without being watched, space to cry without being judged, space to pause without having to explain. And sometimes this space is someone who listens, someone who doesn't ask why, someone who doesn't rush, someone who simply is. Being. That's what this person has lost. That's what this person wants. To be whole, to be feeling, to be alive. But until that happens, they remain there, in the middle of the journey, between what has been and what is yet to come. This person stayed, but only because they didn't know they had already left. And if now, while reading this, something stirred inside, it's because there is a part of you that recognizes it. Maybe you are that person. Or maybe you are still trying to reach them. One way or another you realize. And realizing is where everything starts to change. This person is stuck in the middle, in a gap between giving up and enduring. They stayed because leaving would be too scandalous, but staying is slowly killing them. The truth is that time doesn't heal everything. It heals what is spoken, it heals what is expressed, it heals what is named, but what is swallowed, suffocated, silenced, decays. This person is carrying remnants of themselves, of what has been and no one saw come to an end. They carry obligations that no longer make sense. They carry ties that have turned into knots. They carry promises they couldn't keep, not even to themselves. And still, they continue to be held accountable for not being like before, for not showing, for not reacting, for not being present anymore. But how can you demand presence from someone who is already broken inside? This person became a target for expectations, but no one asked what they needed. And you know what they needed? Nothing. Just a place where they could dissolve into silence. Just a moment where no one asked anything. Just a time where the world didn't demand performance. Because they don't want to perform anymore. They want to collapse. They want to let go. They want to forget. Forget who they had to become. Forget who they couldn't be. Forget the eyes that did not see the exhaustion. Forget the hands that never knew how to hold. This person does not want to be healed right now. They want to be left in peace. They want to stop being seen as strong, essential, resilient. Too much resilience is draining. Love without return empties. Giving without receiving destroys. And still they insist. They still get out of bed. They still respond to messages. They still show up. But those who see are deceived because they only show up with what's left. What's left isn't life. It's a mechanism. This person acts by reflex, not by desire. And when someone asks, "What do you want?" The only honest answer would be, I want to disappear without anyone noticing. It's not death, it's escape, it's existential exhaustion. They want to exit the stage without a scandal, just to see if anyone truly felt their presence, or if they just got used to their role. This person is tired of being useful. They want to be felt. They want to be touched without obligation. They want to be looked at with truth. And maybe, just maybe, there's still a last spark inside them, a small desire, almost imperceptible, for someone to see them before they fade away completely. This spark doesn't ask for help. It asks for perception. It asks someone to stop looking at what they show and start listening to what they silence, because there's a scream inside this person. But it has no sound. It has weight. It has absence. It has exhaustion. And this scream is not against anyone. It's against everything they had to silence to keep going. Do you feel this? Do you notice? Is there someone near you like this? Or is this person reading this right now? Because if so, no. No one disappears completely overnight. It's always in increments, a laughter that becomes smaller, a gaze that doesn't shine, a touch that doesn't linger, a presence that empties quietly. This person remains, but what remains, Gig, is no longer whole. And yet the world demands reaction, demands return, demands the previous version, as if it were possible to go back to being what one was after feeling what one has felt. It's impossible to undo perceptions. It's impossible to unfeel. It's impossible to erase what cracked the soul. This person doesn't need to rush. They need time that isn't measured by the clock. They need care that doesn't feel like an obligation. They need presence that doesn't apply pressure. And maybe what saves us isn't love itself, but the silent presence of someone who stays without trying to fix, without trying to mold, without trying to heal, just being, simply being. This person remains, but there's something around them trying to pull them back, maybe slowly, maybe with fear, but wanting, not for the sake of others, but because deep down there's a part of them that still wants to truly exist. And that part is the only thing that still breathes, even beneath so much absence. If you felt all of this while reading, comment, I'm still here. Because sometimes that's all this person needs to remember, that they still are, even if nearly nothing. Even if by a thread, even if everything says otherwise, they still are. And this is the beginning of a return. Share with those who need it. Comment on what you felt, leave a like and subscribe so you don't disappear.